My events, the hashtag to use State of the Nation. So tonight, good people, we want to take a look at very important process that is happening, and it began on the 24th of March, that is yesterday, 2024, and it is a 1-month exercise, a very vigorous exercise, a marathon that will lay down the roadmap of what to expect in the coming years. Remember, we have by-elections in at least 7 constituencies and a couple of wards that have not yet have the opportunity to represent, or rather to elect their representative, after some lost their member of parliament. In this case, like Malava constituency, we have people from Ugunja who their MP was nominated, or rather was appointed to be the cabinet secretary, and in that case they lack that very important representation. So what is happening right now is the vetting of the chairpersons for the seat of the IEBC, that is the Independent Electoral and Boundary Commission, and it began yesterday. So the most important exercise and the most important thing to pay attention is what this election panel led by Dr. Nelson Makanda is actually looking for is the commissioners that will offer credible, free, credible, verifiable, and of course, independent elections in regard to the Constitution and the Election Act. So the first persons, or rather the first group of people that were interviewed were now the former registrar, the judiciary registrar, that is Anna Madi. Those were the first people to be interviewed yesterday. It was a very heated discussion. Questions of integrity are put into test in that regard. Then after that, and of course we'll be getting those graphics, it's just a matter of time so that we can bring you up to speed with what to expect. The first set of interview, then today, day 2, we had another set of interview for candidates who are actually interviewed for this very important exercise. So remember, the first lot were done, the 4 of them. Today, another 4 candidates were vetted. Then tomorrow, this is when the first phase of this exercise will end. Remember, this is now the process now to select the IEBC chairperson. Out of 37 candidates, they were narrowed down to 11. And tomorrow, the chapter will now close on that one. Now, this will pave way for the next chapter, that is the commissioners. Out of this, at least we'll be looking for 6 commissioners to constitute the 7 panel, that is the 7 IEBC officials, or rather commissioners. And of course, in regard to that, remember, in these commissioners, we have that is 1,319 applicants. Out of that, shortlisted were 105. Now, the first phase of this interview will begin on 26th of March after the conclusion of the selection panel, or rather the vetting of the candidate for the seat of the IEBC chairperson. After that, now this is where it gets very interesting. Remember, all this is to pave way for the by-elections that we have. And remember, just like I mentioned before, we have pending by-elections in at least 7 constituency. Very fresh is the Malava constituency, where they lost their member of parliament. Then we have Ugunja constituency, we have Banisa, then we have Magarini, where the Supreme Court nullified the election of their area member of parliament. With that, Kenyans from those areas, they have been without representative for quite a while. And of course, remember, this is part of very important crucial process in regard to that. Another very important process that you are waiting to see, and this is against, actually we are rushing against time, is the boundary review. Actually, on this one, we are past schedule. And will we be able to manage on this one? This is a big question. But nonetheless, the process must continue. Now, and to help us unpack this very important discussion, let me now invite my guest, that is Brian Osongo. This is the Young Political Association. Then we have Eston Maina, President M. Kusa will be joining us later on. But straight away, Brian, yes. The process at this particular time is very important and crucial, given the fact that we are racing against time. Remember, this is the process that should have been done long time ago. And we have the panel now selecting, vetting, and of course selecting the IEBC chairperson and of course the commissioners that will form the next crop of the IEBC commissioners. First of all, what this selection panel is looking at is officers who will first of all offer credible, fair, free, and verifiable election. Do you have hopes that this process, at the end of the day, will deliver that very important and simple task that Kenyans are really actually waiting for?
I believe so that this vetting process will really deliver good results. I believe so. It's gonna be important to us, more especially for these elections that we are going to have the coming days and the 2027 national elections. I hope they will elect good aspirants or the good individual who will really represent us well. I have hopes for them.
Okay, from time immemorial, this the ghost of always election, the contested election. If we can draw back to the time of Samuel Kivetu, then we had Isaac Hassan, Wafula Chebukati. One constant denominator in all this, that the players always, the aggrieved players always had something to say about now the referees. I'm talking about now the commission. Some argue that the elections in the country have not been held in a free, verifiable, and accountable aspect of it. What must we get right this time round to make sure that even as we move forward, we learn from the past lessons and make sure that this time the commissioners that we'll be getting will be accepted by all commissioners, or rather by all players and even Kenyans, because the fading trust is something that has really, troubled a lot of Kenyans and even politicians for that matter. So what must we get right this time round?
Okay, what we must get right this time round is to have guys that the ground that the majority of the ground is looking for or is hoping for to be the one that is leading the IEBC. If the ground goes well with the person being elected, then we have hopes for it. Because, okay, let me talk about the national government, which is other times in the back times we see the government really influencing this IEBC. We see guys like Chebukati, which has brought a lot of chaos in this country. But for now, if we go with the majority of the ground, I think all things will be good and well.
Okay.
Yes.
And one important area that we need to actually look at, with all this contestation, the shifting of the ball, the blame game here and there, this begs the question, which is very important, that over time, we have the referees that Kenyans believe should actually offer free, verifiable, and credible election. The bone of a contention has always been about the character and the integrity of the commissioners. And when you look at some of the candidates that have actually presented their names and of course their nomination for this important exercise, some of them have the ghost. Of course, in Kenya, you are innocent until proven guilty. But the mere fact that you have like a tag that is holding you down, don't you think this is a clear indication that at the first place, we should not be having such people
Yeah.
contesting or rather vying for this very important exercise
Yes.
that at the end of the day will determine the future of the country in terms of governance and politics.
Yeah.
Don't you think maybe it's something that we need to take a look at that in a very...
Right. Okay, what I think about this, this is an important process. It's an honorable seat that determines what we are heading as Kenyans. Uh, what I can say that is holding some of the people back or as a country back, it can be the guys of tribals, like electing someone because he's of our community or is my friend, and they're bringing a lot of what the Kenyans will not like.
All right.
Yeah.
And let me chip in Eston into this discussion. Well, Eston, the task for Dr. Nelson Makanda is just simple. His, and of course his team, is just to offer commissioners that will offer free, credible, and verifiable election. That is their simple role. At the end of the day, do you think this very simple and noble task will be achieved at the end of the day? Do you have the confidence and the trust that the selection panel will give Kenyans this, commissioners that the country has been lacking for quite a while, in words of many politicians, because election in Kenya has always been a affair of contemptation from the politicians and even a section of Kenyans, those aggrieved by the decision that some of these commissioners have made in the past. Do you think this time around this is the silver bullet?
Evans, yes, thank you. Evans, I just wish just for once as Kenyans we would be, honest with ourselves, because many a times that we say, the IEBC is independent, but is it really independent? Because we have seen characters who have been, actively participating, in political affairs, characters who have been known to, to support a particular, side of, the political landscape as it is, uh, come forward and now say now they are cleansed and now they are ready to be, unbiased. And that is, that is something that is, you know, unheard of and obnoxious. I hope we would just be honest with ourselves and establish a commission like the one that was established in 2002, the Samuel Kivuitu Commission, where we were honest with ourselves as a country, where KANU appointed, 11 commissioners to represent them, and the opposition, appointed 10 to represent them. When we know that these people hold, brief for particular parties, it is now easier for us to come forward, sit down, at a table and discuss. We know this commissioner is holding brief for ODM. We know the other commissioner is holding brief for, UDA. We know the other commissioner is holding brief for Jubilee and all the other political parties. That way it is easier because now we know all the interests of these political parties are catered for, because from the very beginning, we as a country say, okay, this is a political commission and we have to represent everyone. But when we come forward and lie to ourselves as Kenyans and say it is an independent commission, then we have faces that we have seen, time and again, represent, particular political parties in the political field. It becomes an unfair game. There is nothing independent about somebody who is already, politically aligned. So
And
I
uh,
think,
and and of course, Aston, during the the selection panel, when the constitution of the selection panel was actually being constituted, I remember we had the political parties nominating their representative, the Law Society of Kenya nominating their representative. We had the liaison committee and all this. When each interested party, of course, present their candidate, don't you think now, when it comes to facing now the ghost of mistrust that we have had for a very long time, don't you think this element was now covered, or do you still read mischief in some of the names that were fronted for to be part of the IEBC selection panel?
Apart from it, we know our political, let me just say, the political events of our country have been largely, manipulated, and even those societies you say, we have seen, some hands, behind it, push forward their candidates in those particular, groups you're talking about, the civil society movements. So who there represents the independent candidates? Because for me, I ran as an independent candidate for Member of Parliament in the Laikipia West constituency. Who represents me in that panel? Because now, if we say that we pick from the Law Society of Kenya, we pick from the majority, I mean, from the larger parties, and now from the government, who represents these smaller parties? Because there now, Evans, you have, the bigger political parties swallowing these other smaller parties and saying, you know what, we represent your interests, which is far from the truth, Evans. So I would hope or wish we as a country could sit down and say, each political party give us a candidate that will represent your interests in that panel, or pick a party that would, cater for your interests, because now we have larger coalitions that happen. So if maybe, for example, you're in the Azimio coalition and you may be ODM, let's say in the 2022 elections, you don't need a commissioner for Jubilee, a commissioner for ODM. They were all under the same umbrella. If let's say you were in the Kenya Kwanza Alliance, you don't need a commissioner for PSP, you don't need a commissioner for Maendeleo Chap Chap. They all fall under one umbrella, the ANCs, the Ford Kenya. If these alliances then come forward and give us, their representatives, then the smaller parties maybe have their individual representatives because maybe they don't coalesce. And now the independent candidates can forward someone to represent them. Then maybe, just maybe, we could have something close to justice.
All right. And let me get Brian's view on this. Now that Eston says,
Yes.
in as much as the process, it's a new process,
Yeah.
and of course that is constituted with a various umbrella. You have the Law Society of Kenya
Yeah.
giving out their preferred candidate for this selection panel.
Yeah.
We had the political parties, we had the civil society,
Yes.
all this
Yeah.
represented, and of course interest group in that. But if with all that we still have the level of mistrust in this, so the question will be, what is the way forward? What must we as Kenyans do to make sure that the next commissioners of IEBC will be accepted by you, Brian, by you, Eston, and of course Kenyans and even politicians? So what must we get it right?
Okay, we have many political organizations in Kenya. Many of them are small, and a part of them, they are big political organizations that offer their candidates, and they obviously have large numbers that support them, and they have a good network. You see, like guys like us, we are Young Political Association of Kenya. Our party is small. You see, the guys like Morara Kebaso, they are rising, and the Inject Party, they are upcoming parties. Now, these are political parties that are very big in the industry. They are swallowing actually the smaller ones, like the Young Political Association, the Inject, and the No Societies, like the other ones. Yeah, now what I'm thinking they supposed to do for this, the solution, the general of them, actually, what we can do is to come as youths. 75% of Kenyans here in our country are youths, which are that 5 years and below.
Okay.
We are quite a good number. If we can come together, maybe push a specific candidate who we want, maybe that will work for us.
All right. So, Eston, what is the way forward? What must we do right this time round to make sure that the next pair of IEBC commissioners will be accepted universally by Kenyans and, of course, politicians, so that these issues of every electioneering period, we really, get a very disgruntled lot of politicians blaming the referees for not being so fair. So what must we do right?
Evans, I hope did away with this, this thing of creating seven demigods who have now to decide the fate of Kenya. And I think if we go back to our constitution, the results that are tallied at the constituency level are final. Why can't we have tallying centers in every constituency that announces results? Then that way, we just have to do away with the national tallying center. Because oftentimes, you see a process that could have taken maybe an hour, because it takes, let's say, uh, from maybe 5 p.m. when the polling stations are closed, to about 6 p.m. for the agents to organize. They can do the tallying between 6 p.m. and 7 p.m. Meaning, if every polling station in Kenya has a maximum of 600 voters, it is very possible for that tallying center to have tabulated those votes by 7 or 8 p.m. And meaning we don't have to wait for 6, 7 days for the National Tallying Center to tell us who the president is. Because the only thing that does, it creates room for manipulation of votes. Because in Kenya, we do not have a problem with the IEBC at the lower level. We don't have a problem with the IEBC at the constituency level. We don't have a problem with the IEBC at the tallying, no, sorry, at the polling station level. We only have a problem with the IBC when it comes to the National Tallying Center. Because now you have cases where you have a county where, when you tally all the votes, when the governor got, the senator got, and the president got, you see a difference of about maybe 30 to 40,000 voters who only voted for the presidency. Now you're left asking yourself, when you walk into a polling station, constitutionally, Evans, you're supposed to be handed 6 ballot papers. Whatever you choose to do with them is up to you. You can decide to vote for the president and, submit the others as unmarked, and they will be tallied as spoiled votes. So, what happens to these other votes that you see the president got, let's say, 200,000 votes, and the governor, when you tally these votes for the governorship, the total votes come to about 150,000. Where does this 50,000 come from that cannot be accounted for the senatorial seat, for the gubernatorial seat? Where do these votes come from? Because when we create a national tallying center, that has to decide the fate of Kenyans who can actually count their votes. We did it in 2002, the Uhuru versus Kibaki time period. And the constituency announced the results, and all Kibuitu had to do was to sit at a boardroom and announce the results. We don't need to spend billions creating a tallying center at Bomas of Kenya, spending 7 to 10 billion Kenyan shillings for nothing, paying choirs to sing to us.
And because, gentlemen, you're running out of time, so let me just get your thoughts on this very quick. Um, Now, after this process is done, of course, the work at hand is quite, very heavy. And of course, it's race against time to make sure that at least the pending by-elections will be concluded in just a matter of time. And of course, another very critical issue that we are really facing is the boundary review, which will be done 12 months before the general election. Well, gentlemen, do you think we have time for all this?
No, we
Brian?
don't have time. We
Mhm.
don't have time for all that because we are running out of time. We as Kenyans, we are facing a lot which we need to solve for the government. Money is being lost from banks and the national government, which actually needs to be done on work now. We don't have time for that.
All right.
Yes.
Well, Aston, of course, boundary review by elections to prepare for the next general election. Really have time. Should it be fully constituted?
I think there's always time to do the right thing, Evans, because what happens now, if we don't, fill in these holes in our walls, the wall will crumble on us. And why we need a review of these boundaries, Evans, is for a simple reason where we have constituencies that have, you know, immense number of voters versus constituencies that have, you know, a minimal number of voters getting the same voices in parliament, getting the same allocations in parliament, and we cannot say that we do not have time to do the right thing. You know, we as Kenyans, you know, we need to start on the right foot. And why we have seen many annulments, many nullifications is because, we tend to rush things. We want things that, that go ahead quickly. We come up with a finance bill that doesn't follow the due process. It is nullified. Let us start on the right foot. We will not have people say that, oh, my region is not allocated enough resources. Oh, his region is being favored. When we start on the right foot, Evans, at least it will be a good step in gaining the trust of the IEBC.
All right, so gentlemen, thank you so much for making time. Brian Osongo, yeah, that is Young Political Association.
of
Asante
Kenya.
sana for making time, Brian.
Thank you
And
so
then
much.
Eston Maina, President MKUSA. Asante sana for making time, Eston. All right, so this is a very important conversation about the state of the nation and what is happening in the country. Remember, it's a very critical exercise that in the next 30 days will determine the future of the country. So, with that discussion, and now it's fair to switch gears.